Hello friends, my name is Lacon. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you are having a fantastically whimsical day, and if not, hopefully this video makes your day just a little bit better. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a mid-year reading wrap-up, kind of doing some of the questions from the mid-year reading wrap-up tag, as also just like diving into the stats and how my reading's been going so far. We're already 6 months into the year. Whenever I was younger and I heard adults talking about how fast time goes and all this stuff, I thought they were being weird and it didn't make sense to me. But the older I get, the more I hear myself saying those exact same words, and goodness, this year has flown by, but we've gotten some great books in this year. We've read some amazing books. So let's go ahead and grab those books and dive into today's bookish discussion. I figured first we should go through some stats. So I've got my story graph pulled up with the reading stats, which I love. That story graph has all these graphs and I can like look at all this stuff. It's just very appealing. So at the beginning of the year, I set my goal at 50 books, but I've surpassed 50 books. I've read over 50 books, and it was before the middle of the year when I reached 50. So we've bumped it up to 100 books for our 2025 reading goal. And I've read a total of 61 books so far in the year, which is so great. Like, I know that reading is not everything and it's not a competition and you should really only read if you enjoy it, and like it's a personal journey. But I always feel so accomplished whenever I'm able to look back and see, like, look at all this that I've done. I've read all these stories and I just feel accomplished. It's the same whenever I look back at art projects and like if I'm able to physically see how much I've done within a specific amount of time, it just makes me feel good. Like if I'm able to look back at, these are all the embroidery projects I've done in 2025, it like just makes me feel nice. I love to be able to see a checkmarked list, no matter what it is. So reading isn't a competition, and I know that, but I do enjoy reading a lot, and seeing 61 books read this year makes me happy. Especially when the average rating is 3.61. I think that's kind of around where my ratings usually end up at the end of the year. So I don't think this year has been like super amazing or anything so far, but so far we've read 12 5-star books, which I think is pretty great. The only thing is 1, 2, 3, 5 of those books are rereads, which is the most I've ever read. What was that? The most I've ever reread in a year. I don't reread a lot, but I reread all the Soulless books, so that was a bunch of rereads. And 3 of the books in that series are on this list, so those were rereads. I have this super big video idea that I'm excited for. It's like 19, 20 bucks. So something like that. So I have to reread all that. So it's going to be a lot of rereads this year. A lot. I'll go ahead and put all the 5-star books that I've read this year. We've got The Princess Companion by Melanie Sellier. We have Soulless, Blameless, and Timeless from Gail Carriger in the Parasol Protectorate series. We have Codename Edelweiss by Stephanie Lansom, which is like a World War II spy novel. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. That was a super good, like, nonfiction, just talking about, like, your body healing and how trauma impacts like your body physically and not just like mentally. And then we have The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson, which is the first of the Remnant Chronicles, and I need to read the second and third one of this, but I don't have access. Like I have to buy them. And I'm always putting off buying books physically. But I need to do it. Like that was, I think, one of the first books I read this year that I was like obsessed with, and I need to finish the series. I can't let this be one of the series that I start and I enjoy it, but I just never get around to continuing it. So we'll have to do that. And then we have a few other Melanie Sellier books that are within that princess retelling era. And then we also have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which, obvious. Oh my goodness. Maybe not obvious, because I didn't really enjoy Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I really enjoyed this one. And then Counterfeit by Kristen Chen. I read that one for my ABC reading vlog, where I read a bunch of C books. I keep thinking about that book still. It's like these two women who sell counterfeit bags, and it's good. It's good. Obviously, all these books are good because I gave them 5 stars. Obviously. But then for like the other ratings we have, the most ratings I have is 4 stars with 13 books, which I think is pretty good. As I look at all these books, all of them I'm like, yeah, I would happily recommend all of them. And then this year I'm diving more into half-star ratings and like just like 2.75, 3.5, different things like that. So my rating is super spread out. And I do have one book that I've given 1 star to so far, and that was This Wicked Fate, the second book in the Poison Heart series by Kaylin Barron. Kaylin Barron is very much a author that is hit or miss with me. I will pick up every single one of her books. They always sound so interesting, but then just some of them don't hit the same. I had originally started reading this one physically, and it was just my like take to work book, so I was reading it only like 10-20 minutes at a time on my like lunch break. But it was just, I ended up like kind of soft DNFing it because it was just, I just wasn't looking forward to reading it. I didn't want to read it. I was bored, and also it had been such a long time since I'd read the first book, but I wasn't interested in rereading the first book. So I soft DNF'd it, and then I was able to get it on audiobook. And I realized I should have just kept it at a DNF. Because my preferred way of reading is through audio, because that's the easiest for me to understand and digest things, sometimes listening to it after I've like, I don't know about the physical one, does help. But it didn't help with this one. So it's a bummer that Kaylin Barron is the only 1-star book this year so far, but this isn't gonna discourage me from getting more Kaylin Barron. Because I can't remember, let me see real quick. Yeah, I gave this Poison Heart 4 stars. So it just, I don't know, it didn't hit the same. It wasn't what I remember from the first book, but also there were some parts that I probably would have benefited from rereading the first one. I don't know. Maybe this 1-star rating's on me. Maybe it's on me. But that's why it's my personal rating. The month I read the most in is April, where we read 17 books in April, and that's the most books I've read within a month so far. And the lowest one that I've done so far was February, which makes sense. It's the shortest month. And then my top 3 authors so far that I've read the most from this year. Melanie Sellier, I've read 9 of her books. Gail Carriger, I've read 8. And then Kaylin Barron, Brandon Sanderson, and Melissa De La Cruz, I've read 3 books from each of them so far this year. And then I'll put up the graph of all the different genres up here, but 35 books so far have been fantasy, 23 have been young adult books, and then 12 have been romances. And some of those are fantasy romances, and then some of them, like the young adult, laps over with them, so it's not like one for one of all these different genres, especially since young adult isn't actually a genre. But those are the top 3 so far, and then the next 2 are historical and LGBTQIA+, with 9 books total for each of those. But yeah, those are the different stats. Again, you can follow me on, I say again, like I've already said this. No, I haven't. But you can follow me on Storygraph. We can be friends. I'll accept your friend request. So that way you can see either what I'm currently reading at this moment, or what I'm going to be reading, or what I have read, all that kind of stuff. Right now I'm currently reading 4 books. I'm reading The Lightning Thief, the first Percy Jackson book, for the first time. I'm reading that with my partner. He loves Percy Jackson, and I just never read it as a kid. So we're reading that together. And then I'm also reading I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Taboke by Bak Sehi, which I have to, like, when it makes me feel seen, like the book makes me feel seen in how like things are discussed. But also when I'm feeling super down, it's not beneficial to pick that book up. So I have to be very selective. And then I'm also reading Into Every Generation, A Slayer is Born, How Buffy Staked Our Hearts by Evan Ross Katz. And that is for a video that will probably not come out anytime soon, because I have to read everything physically. And as we know, me reading physically takes forever. And then also reading Dragon Fruit by Makia Lucier. And that is for another video that will be out a lot sooner than the Into Every Generation book is. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the questions. Hopefully I haven't already answered all the questions. I don't think I have. Just by like talking about stats and stuff like that. But what is the best book that I've read so far this year? Let's see. I think it may have to be Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I think that's probably the best book I've read this year, especially if I don't include rereads, because I already knew that I would like those. But Counterfeit by Kristen Chen was also really high up there. So yeah, I think those are going to be the best book I've read this year. And then what's the best book that I've reread so far this year? Would have to be The Princess Companion by Melanie Sellier. It's the first book in the Four Kingdoms fairy tale retelling series. And just getting, like, this book, I didn't know how much I would, like, love fairy tale retellings. Romance fairy tale retellings, I didn't know until I read this book, like, a few years ago. And getting to reread it was such a treat. Sometimes I get worried, like, oh, that book's not going to hold up. You know, it wasn't bad, but it's just not going to feel the same if I reread it again. But this one felt the same. Loved it so much again. So I'm happy I was able to go back to it and reread it. I'm glad I didn't regret it. And I'm also glad that I discovered a new genre for myself that I can, like, fully dive into. So the next question is, what is a new release that you haven't read but you want to read? And this book, I don't follow too many, like, oh, this is coming out this year, so you gotta read it. Most of the time, because I just don't realize when I'm adding a book to my TBR that it's new, or maybe when people talk about it, they say that it's new, but I'm just not registering it. So, but there is a book that I'm wanting to read with Walter that I do know. I didn't realize it hadn't come out yet when I put it on our like reading together bingo board. But it hasn't come out yet. So it's about like an old lady who's a serial killer, but I can't remember the name. I think it's by Samantha Downing. Yes, here it is. It's called Too Old for This. It releases, I think in September. This says August. It releases in August, and it's about a retired serial killer's quiet life is upended by an unexpected visitor. To protect her secret, there's only one option left. What's another murder? So that just sounds so good. I'm kind of hoping it gives me the vibes like, there's been some other like old, where old people are the main characters, but like they're murderers, they're serial killers. And I think the one specifically that I'm thinking of is but I think that actually may be a spoiler. So we're redacting that. I'm sorry, you don't get to know it. I'm hoping this book is like. But yeah, Too Old for This by Samantha Downing hasn't come out yet, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, please. Oh, and then the next question is, what is your most anticipated book for the second half of the year? I guess it's gonna be that one. Because it's already came out, or it hasn't came out yet. Then we're gonna go into the biggest disappointment of the year. So a biggest disappointment for me doesn't have to be the lowest rated book. So like, I only have one book on a 1-star, but I don't even think that's like the biggest disappointment that I've read. I don't know how high my expectations were. Like, I wasn't, that sounds bad. But like, I wasn't going into it thinking it was going to be a 5-star book. I just wanted to know the conclusion of the story. And I got that. I was able to conclude the story, and I'm happy that the characters were able to have a happy ending. It just wasn't for me. So I don't know if I was super disappointed by that. I think probably my biggest disappointment was When the Day Comes by Gabrielle Mayer. The concept of this book sounded so good. And for the first half, the execution was amazing. Oh my goodness. I thought I had found something that like, because it's a series and it's a big series, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes. So essentially in this book, our main character is living in the 1700s, right before the America goes to war with Britain to fight for our independence. And then when she goes to sleep, she wakes up in the 1800s in London, and she has these two lives. And so when she goes to sleep in the London world, she'll wake up in the Revolutionary War era, essentially. And she keeps going back and forth. And on her 21st birthday, she'll have to decide which world she is staying in for forever. And she'll stop hopping back and forth between times. And this book just, oh, it was scratching all the right scratches. But in the second half, it starts to take on a role that the characters lose their humanity and start just becoming a vessel to promote this viewpoint and this worldview, that you could have gotten that worldview out in a more like organic way. And I don't know how to talk about it without straight up spoiling the book, but it's essentially, I guess this is the way I can say it, trigger warning for essay and all that kind of stuff. And then from that trigger warning it goes into pro-life talking points. And it was very hard to read that, and it could have been, like, you could have still gotten all of that without, you find out that you're pregnant because of this traumatic thing that has happened, and you're crying and wanting to die, and then the very next day you're excited about this and no longer upset about it at all, because you're carrying life. I hope that makes sense. I hope what I'm trying to get across is coming across. It was just very much, the first half had some stuff, but it was like, okay, this is just how the character is. But then the second half, what character? We're just now a vessel for a child. And it was frustrating because now whenever I'm like, because Storygraph has a find more books like this, and so I was like, okay, I want more time books like this, specifically like living in two worlds, 2 time periods, stuff like that. Like, that is what I'm wanting. But whenever I look in these similar books, it's all very much so like leaning more into the Christian religious aspect of it and not the time aspect. So sad. So if you have any books where it's like living in 2 different times, like the same person living in 2 different times, please let me know. Because if I can't find any more, I may be desperate enough to just write it myself. Next is, what was the biggest surprise that I read this year? And that would have to be The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. Obviously, I don't go into any book thinking I'm gonna hate it, but that book came out in 2014, so I figured that it was gonna be one of those types of books where I enjoyed it, but I would have enjoyed it more if I had read it in high school. But no, I loved it. I ate it up. I was reading it at some parts with my partner, and he was loving it as well, and I ended up just like consuming that book so quickly, especially because like I had to physically read that book, and I've said it like 3 times already, but yeah, it takes forever for me to read physically. But this book, I read it physically like I read The Hunger Games for the first time, or like I read The Selection for the first time, in like one sitting. I didn't read this one in one sitting, but you know, I read it fast. And I read it like I did. Excuse me.
Am I interrupting your recording?
You are interrupting my recording.
Well, that's tough luck.
What's the best book you've read so far?
In ever?
No, this year.
This year, Knights of Wind and Truth, which is the 5th Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archives book.
Is that the new one?
Yeah. 5 stars.
Yeah.
5 stars.
What was the worst book you've read this year?
Did we read The Foxwife this year?
Yeah, we did.
Maybe The Foxwife. I haven't read like bad books. Oh, do DNFs count?
Yeah.
Harrow the Ninth, or the second Gideon the Ninth book. Bad book.
I was talking about my biggest disappointment book, which was the timey-wimey religious book.
Oh, yeah.
And just talking about it again makes me so sad. I want more like that, but they're all like, I want to read the rest of this.
Your own.
Yeah, like I want to read the rest of the series, but I just, not if they're all gonna be like pro-life propaganda. This is disappointing. Wait, I want a piece.
No.
Yeah.
Why? You don't even like the series we're watching. You get to do that little promo.
Joyride can be found at Target,
Kroger, 7-Eleven,
7-Eleven, and CVS now. Ooh.
and CVS.
I can't remember what I was saying, but yeah. A Kiss of Deception is very much the biggest surprise that I've read this year. Which I'm glad, because like the series and like the other part of the series, how there's like 2 different series together, but you need to read this one to get to that one. Like, it all sounds interesting. So I'm glad that I loved it as much as I did. so that way I can continue on. So next is new favorite author, either new to me or debut. I don't know if I have like a new author that I'm like, yes, all in for. At least not that I haven't read before this year. But I think the author that I'm like super interested to read more from is Mindy McGinnis. I read Be Not Far From Me, and that book was so good. It's about a young girl who gets lost in the woods and essentially has to survive. It's kind of like a YA Wild, or it essentially, like the tagline says, Hatchet meets Wild, which I think is so accurate. I've not read Hatchet myself, but that's one of my partner's favorite books that he read growing up, so I've heard a lot about it. And I think it's very fitting. So like that book was really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I was like gripped onto the edge of my seat. My little toes were curled with anticipation with this book. So I definitely want to read more from her. Like I'm definitely keeping my eye out and adding some of her older stuff or just some of her other work into my TBR. And then the next one is the book that has made me cry the most so far. And I actually haven't been doing a lot of crying while I read. I've definitely teared up some. There's definitely been some books, especially when I'm reading them or listening to them while I'm at work. I'm like, I gotta keep it together. I gotta hold it in. But the one that I was not able to keep it together and hold it in was Sunrise on the Reaping. Oh my goodness, I was crying so much in that book. Suzanne Collins, she knows how to hit. And she knows how to hit right in the middle of the heart. Yeah, I was like instantly from the very beginning of the book to the very end, I would just start welling up and crying, mainly just because of like the things that would be going on and the implications of what that meant for the rest of our Hunger Games knowledge. Like as soon as we found out that Haymitch's birthday was July 4th, and that is the day of the reaping, I knew that it was going to be, like, she was going for the heart for this whole entire thing. Okay, so the next question is, what is the prettiest book I've bought this year? There hasn't been a book that's, like, stand out, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful, mainly because, 1, I just don't buy a lot of books, and 2, usually when I do, I'm buying them from, like, thrift stores, and you're not going to find those super pretty covers that take you away at a bookstore or at a thrift store. So it's kind of hard. But I think the thing that I am the most excited to put on my shelf this year is, so far, is adding more Buffy books to my bookshelf. I have a Buffy shelf, and the ability to just I got 4 new books to add to that shelf, and so I'm just excited to have these, and I just want a whole shelf full of Buffy books, Buffy memorabilia. Like, the ability to put these on my shelf this year has been such a joy. Such a joy. And then what books do I need to read by the end of this year? A lot of video ideas that I want to get to this year. So like reading books for those videos, I hope to do that this year. Like all those Buffy books, I hope to have them all read this year. And then I have a book club with my partner where we read books together and we talk about them and discuss them. So I want to have those books done as well, which we've been doing pretty decently at our like checking books off of that. We're a little behind on the books we have and haven't read for that, mainly because we've been picking up other books to read together that aren't on this list. I'll put that up on the screen. And so like essentially the books from May through December we have not read yet. And so I really want to get to all those books together and read them. And then I also want to finish the rest of the Kiss of Deception Remnant Chronicles series. I don't want it to be 3 years from now, but when I finally finish that series. No. I wanna finish it while the first book is still fresh in my head. And with that, I think those are like all of the questions. At least all the ones that I could like really find, or that weren't like, I know some of the questions were like, what's your newest fictional crush? And like, who's your favorite character? And I don't really have answers for those, so. Unless we talk about movies. I just watched K-pop Demon Hunters. The Saja Boys? And Huntrix? Those may be my new fictional crushes. If I'm allowed to have crushes at the old age of 28. The last thing I want to discuss is kind of my goals, my reading goals that I've had for this year, where I'm at with them, and where I hope to be. Obviously, I hope to finish them by the end of the year, but one of my goals has been to really clean out my TBR and kind of like be more intentional with that. And essentially have a place where like I hear about books. I'm like, oh, that might be cool. I put those in a separate place and not on my TBR. And also, I need to do better about putting sequels and the rest of the series on the TBR so I don't forget about them, forget about the series that I'm currently reading. So that was one of the goals I've had, and I have not done that yet. I have started with like putting all the books from all these different lists that I have where I've like written down or saved books, putting them all together in one place. So I have been working on that part of it, but haven't done the clearing out yet. The main reason I want to do that is because I'm not going to be able to read all the books I want to, and so I want to be more intentional with like, okay, seeing my previous reading histories of like, I enjoy faster pace, adventurous books. So putting those and weeding out, okay, most of the time when I read a slow-paced, character-driven book, it doesn't land really high for me. So I might not take it off the TBR, but I may be aware of that and like shuffle the TBR around so that way I can make sure I'm reading books that I'm actually gonna enjoy and like just having higher chance, because a lot of times I'll just pick a book based off of title or cover or like what one person said a long time ago and I can't remember what they said, so I'm just trusting that I'm gonna enjoy it because I added it to my TBR at some point, and that kind of sometimes works. It works great a lot of times, but oftentimes I just end up getting meh books. Or books that are like, okay, that was good, but like, wasn't amazing. And so figuring that out and making it to where like I can essentially, I want to get to the point where I can like properly guess if I'm going to enjoy a book or not. And then obviously my reading goal at the beginning of the year, I've surpassed that. And so we've set a new goal. So I've already checked that off the list. If I don't hit the 100 goal, it's not a big deal because I've already reached the 50 goal. I have a goal of reading more with Walter, which I have been doing. We've been reading a lot together. We've read those 4 book club books that we picked out together, as well as we've read a lot of other books, and we're currently reading a book that's not even on that list together. So, you know, I'm really happy with that. I do really enjoy reading books with him and just having discussions of books that we've read together. So yeah, I'm really happy with how that goal is coming along. My last goal was to be more consistent on here, and while I would love to make a video every week, I also have 2 other channels, as well as wanting to write a book and a full-time job. So it's not possible, but I've reconfigured what I'm wanting for this channel, at least for right now. And I'm confident that I'll be able to hit that. And I'm very happy and excited about where we're gonna be going. So hopefully you'll stick around with me as we figure all this out. so far 2025 has been pretty good on the reading front, and I'm super excited to see how my reading continues throughout the year, and hopefully it only goes up. Hopefully I'm able to find more and more 5 stars. The real goal, honestly, is to have my 5-star books be the biggest rating I have out of all of them. Honestly, the 4 stars being above the 3 stars, that is a win. Because the majority of the time, it's the 3 stars that are winning. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed hanging out with me as we discussed all these stats. But that is it for today's bookish discussion. I hope the next book you read is a 5-star read. And let me know any of your thoughts about anything and everything we discussed today. You can answer the questions down below, or you can let me know that you've done this, you have a mid-year reading video up. But yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can know whenever I post more bookish content and whenever we have more little book clubs like this. So I will see you in the next one. Bye!